guys in your project. So ask questions and
yeah. So there's thanks. A lot of cool material gonna come your way, so please pay attention. And then, right, remember we're talking about trying to build up who we want our customer to be, what kind of information we're looking for from the customer, so that's kind of what we're gonna focus on. All right. So.
okay. Hi guys. My name's Amy, Amy Spira, and I work at Discover. That's what I'm here to talk to you about. I also, just tell you a little bit about me. I don't know if you know any of these folks, but you guys are all juniors, right? Do you know this guy here? Yes. Yes. That is my son Joey. He's a senior here at Carmel, and my daughter Ella is a freshman here at Carmel, and she's in Miss Lindgren's Intro to Business class, and that's kind of how Miss Lindgren found out what I did and said, can you come in and talk to the class? So here I am. And that's Mr. Spira there in the background. And we love the Cubs. And we're sad that we're done playing now, and we're going to have a much lower key October than I would have liked. So I'm here to talk to you about kind of what I do, how I got to where I'm at currently in my career, and then I'm going to take you through some examples of stuff. I work at Discover Financial Services. I work in consumer insights. I originally started my career in advertising. I worked at an advertising agency called Leo Burnett. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of Leo Burnett, but they're a big advertising agency in downtown Chicago. I worked primarily on media buying and planning there for clients like McDonald's and General Motors. Did some work for like Maytag, washers and dryers, Allstate Insurance. Basically deciding where and when they should advertise, be it on TV, on radio, on online video, print magazines, things like that, and made plans, strategic plans for them to advertise their products and services and things. So I did that for about 10 years. Then I moved over to Discover. And I originally started in their advertising department, working on sponsorships. We're currently a sponsor. Do you guys know what a sponsorship is? We're currently the sponsor of the National Hockey League, the NHL. We sponsored the Discover Orange Bowl for a while. We no longer do that. So working on different, not all sports. We also did New Year's Eve in Times Square. We used to be a sponsor of that. So I worked on those kinds of opportunities to put the brand out in front of people at different, events and kind of align with where our consumers were. And then about 7 years ago, I moved into consumer insights. And a lot of what I do is take what I learned in the advertising world, and bring a consumer insight lens to it. So learning what consumers think about our ads and what they think about Discover Card as a brand, and bring that back to the business so that we can create better products, better services, better ads for them. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about all that stuff today. Sound good? Any questions? Have you guys all heard of Discover Card before today? What do you guys think of when you think of Discover Card?
Credit card.
The Orange Bowl.
The Orange Bowl, did you remember that, or just because I told you that?
No, I remember that.
Oh, did you? Well, mostly credit card probably, right? And that is the biggest chunk of our business, and that's the business that, most consumers are most familiar with. We also do a bunch of other things. We are a bank. We are a full-service bank, and that's part of our business that's actually growing the fastest right now. We're trying to compete with your brick-and-mortar banks like your Chase and your Bank of America, because today, how many of you guys actually go? When's the last time you actually went to a physical bank?
Last weekend.
Last weekend?
Yeah,
Okay.
2 weeks
Deposited
ago.
some cash.
What did you do?
Deposited some cash and some checks.
Okay.
Yeah, I withdrew money.
You withdrew money. Are there things you could do online or with a debit card?
Yeah.
Was there anybody that did something that they could not do if they had wanted to online or with a debit card at an ATM.
Are you able to like refund with fraudulent charges and everything online?
Yes,
Okay,
we can handle most fraud cases. All right. The truth is, the majority of what we do transact today in a bank can be done online. People are getting more and more comfortable doing that online, and there's very little. There's the one thing that we can't do right now as a bank is deposit cash. Right now, you have to go to like a Chase ATM to deposit cash, and so for Discover, that's one thing that we're kind of still trying to figure out. But there's majority, 95% of what you can do at a bank, physical bank, you can do online. So more and more companies, like Cap One has launched in a very big way, trying to get people to open online bank accounts. So that's a big growing part of our business. Student loans is another place where that you guys are probably all going to be familiar with soon enough. Is another big growing part of our business. And we do home equity loans, and then we've got a bunch of payment transaction type businesses that we do that really you can see here, this is 97% of our business is on this side, kind of our consumer bank. But we run every single transaction that anybody makes with a Discover card gets run through our network. It doesn't get run through Visa and MasterCard. We're a different business from them. It's a different operating model, and we have a ton of strategic advantage in owning some of these other businesses. Diners Club gives us like a global footprint because right now you can't use your Discover card outside the US. So there's a lot of things we do as a company, but what you're most familiar with and what I'm going to talk mostly about is US credit cards and bank and stuff like that we do. So
I didn't know you couldn't use it outside the US.
no, not very many places. There's some places in Canada and Mexico, and we're trying to work on that global piece of it, but it's a limitation. We've got like 4 different kinds of cards. We have, and the one that you're most familiar with and that we market most heavily is the Discover It card, which is the cashback credit card, but we've got different flavors of this. We've got a student card, which is called our Chrome card, that you guys will be eligible. Nobody here is 18 yet, right? So I technically can't market to any of you right now. But when you turn 18, we've got a great student product that actually, I can honestly say, is a really good.
What does it do?
What does it do? It's a credit
What's
card.
different?
What's different about it? It gives you 2% back on gas stations and restaurants. Cash back all the time, because we had done a lot of interviews and research with customers and learned that that market, that 18 to 24-year-old market, spends most of their credit card dollars on gas and restaurants. So we designed the product to kind of be where they were and where they were spending. And a lot of times we do, it's hard to get your first credit card. And a lot of those first credit cards don't come with any rewards at all because you're still building your credit. And so we want to be really careful about who we give credit to, and we don't want to give, companies don't like to give rewards. It costs us money to give those cashback rewards. So we tend not to give those. A lot of products won't give those to like early, your first card, but we do.
How is your credit card different from the other credit cards? So how is Discover different from your Chase or whatever other brand there is?
There's a lot of things that make us different, but primarily the thing that people tend to focus most on is rewards. And what kind of rewards you get. And you'll find like there's a lot of different products out there in the market that give very different types of reward structures to their card members. But there's also things like security features. You guys may have seen our ads about our social security number alerts. We have a pretty unique system that monitors our card members' social security numbers and alerts you if we find your social security number out, anybody opens a new account or tries to do anything suspicious. So we've got some security features that we try to market as being different, but it's hard. This is a very crowded marketplace. It's a very mature marketplace, meaning once you get your first couple cards, people don't want more cards in their wallet. We're at a place, the consumer sentiment is right now where people want to simplify. They don't want a lot of cards in their wallet, so it's very hard for us to get,
Keep going.
yeah.
Right.
When you're asking for when it says on up to $1,000 in combined purchases, do you mean like until we make back like the 2% on $1,000, or like
every $1,000 for up to $1,000 you spend each quarter? So it's like $4,000 a year. And we did a lot of research to find that most students in that age group don't spend more than $4,000. And so it doesn't, we try to make the caps really realistic for the customer so that we're not trying to cheat people out of their, you have to be very careful when you get into this category. There's all kinds of limitations on these products in terms of how much you can earn and
sorry, I don't know a lot about banks, but for like so you guys are just opening banks now, like you're just starting to open up like some banks, right?
mm-hmm.
Do you guys just give cards to people and then they use that card from their bank?
No, this is not issued. We give credit card there. We're giving them a line of credit from Discover.
Oh, from Discover.
This is
Okay,
not
gotcha.
attached to your bank at all. This is our new product. We're in test markets with this right now. We haven't rolled it out nationally. We just launched it. Chicago is not one of those test markets. When you're designing test markets, you generally want to find a smaller, you don't want to, Chicago's a big expensive market to test a product in. So we tend not to try to test too many things in Chicago and New York and LA. So we've got like a handful of like 12 different markets that we're testing. The product's available nationally, but we're testing advertising and marketing in certain areas of the country to see how this product does. But this is a debit card that's actually attached to a checking account that you would get through Discover.
Oh, gotcha.
So you guys are probably, I'm guessing, do any of you have debit cards? Yes, and what we're finding is your generation and people, like younger people, tend to prefer the debit card. And we're getting more and more people, we're having a hard time growing our credit business because there's a whole group of people out there that prefer debit cards because they like to pay, they like the control it gives them. You can't spend too much on a debit card. So that's enough about all the things we do. Let's dive into sort of what I do in Consumer Insights. Really our vision, this is kind of our North Star as a company. All our teams have to sit down and say, we want to make the consumer point of view core to everything we do in Discover Marketing. And that's the job of me and the folks that I work with in Consumer Insights. We want to influence all those top marketing initiatives. So I don't manage all of these new products, but I consult with all the different teams within marketing on different products that they're looking to launch or support and kind of add that customer and consumer point of view to everything that we do. So our mission, we have to have a mission statement, of course. No department would be effective. Consumer Insights, our goal is to get not just information, but to get actionable information. A lot of times sometimes we go out and learn a bunch of stuff, but I can't actually, it's like all interesting, nice to know stuff, but I can't actually do anything with it. So we are very disciplined about making sure when we go out and do surveys and research and everything, that what we're getting back is not just cool stuff, but it's like actually stuff we can do and the teams can make decisions on. That slide, we've got a whole bunch of areas, and I can't even begin to scratch the surface. You guys could take courses and courses on each of these different pillars that are on the slide here. We've got primary research. That's probably our biggest bucket of things that we do as a company, and those are start from scratch surveys that we do internally for Discover. We fund and pay for those studies. We'll go out and contract with a research company to help us do them. And those are things like market segmentations and market sizing, things, attitude and usage surveys. I'm trying to think of other consumer decision journeys. I'm going to show you some examples of all of those. That's primary research. We pay for it, we fund it, we control it. We've also got competitor insights and syndicated resources. So a lot of times, like when you guys are doing your projects, you're probably out like looking at websites. We actually have people that go out and like monitor all the websites of our competitors. So they're out looking at American Express websites, Cap One, Chase, what they're doing, and synthesizing all that information for us and trying to decide what the opportunities are. So we've got competitive, we've got syndicated. There's big companies out there that will do huge studies, and when you do your research on your projects, you may come across some of these. Big companies like, have you heard of J.D. Power? You see them on TV a lot, like we just won the J.D. Power Award for customer service. Companies like that will do huge global studies of an industry that anybody can buy. So I can go out and buy the J.D. Power study and get a ton of data on myself and competitors and how they see Discover Card versus other brands. So that's a whole segment of research. There's behavioral insights, and this is sort of cool. We have a PhD on our team that has a PhD in behavioral insights. Have you heard of behavioral insights or behavioral economics? It's really rooted in the unconscious and what you're doing. We say in research, we spend a lot of time asking people what they think and what they're going to do next time they're in the market for a credit card, what cards you're going to use the next time you're at the grocery store. But what is more predictive than that is actually what they end up doing ends up being very different than what they say they're going to do. And that's because there's a lot going on in the unconscious mind. There are a lot of things, they're called heuristics. Have you heard of a heuristic? It's kind of a mental shortcut. People say that they're making rational decisions, but they're not. There's a million things that underlie that, and we do a lot of research to kind of understand how we can influence people unconsciously. It's kind of cool. I'm not like the best person to speak on it, but we've got people that do a ton of work in that area to try to really uncover what people, not just what they say they're going to do, but what they actually do in real life. We've got UX research. Have you guys heard of UX? UX stands for user experience. And that's like when people actually go out in the real world, and like usually when we usually talk about it, it's usually DUX or DUX is what we call it, and it's digital user experience. It's how people behave on your website, on your mobile app. Are they able to complete basic tasks? Where are they confused? So we do a lot of observational work around getting people to interact with our website and making sure the navigation is right and stuff like that. The last bucket is brand and ad insights, and that's actually where I spend most of my time. And it's once you get your communication and your product ready to go to market, right? And you guys will do this with your project. What is your messaging going to look like? There's a million different ways you could talk to your consumer about your product. What's the right way to get them to engage with your product or purchase your product? We test a lot of different ads, and from TV to radio to digital ads, and I'll do a lot of testing of a lot of different options before we even go to the market to see what's going to be the best way to talk about something. Let's keep going. These, if you can't tell, my job's really cool. It's like a puzzle. We get to ask. People come to us with all different kinds of questions that we need to answer. And our job in Consumer Insights is to let them do that, to help them do this. Like we're really looking for consumer pain points, for which options they like, a consumer likes better, what claim is going to resonate best with them. So you can see there's a whole host of questions. These are all the examples I brought today. I thought we'd go through the first two because I know Ms. Lindgren had those on her slides she sent me, a market segmentation and a market sizing. These are all like 100-page reports, probably in totality. We're not going to go through 100 pages, promise. I'm going to show you just one or two slides from each, just so you guys can get an idea of what the study is, how we use it. You can think about how it might apply to your projects that you're working on here, and so forth. So we'll see if we get through all 7. I don't know if we will or not. And we can kind of pick and choose. Is there one here that you guys are like, oh, I really want to see the consumer decision journey? Or is there any one that pops out that you...
I think behavioral insights.
Okay.
Probably, yeah, you want to go to the first 2. Let's do that first.
Okay, yeah, let's go through the first 2, and then we'll make sure we get to behavioral insights, so we'll kind of watch our time. Market segmentation. The first thing about market segmentation that when we approach it at Discover, it's based on behaviors, not on demographics. You need to look at people, and their behavior is the most predictive thing about them. We can't say all women, we're going to do a segmentation and I'm going to take women ages 18 to 24 and put them all in this bucket. It's really about how you behave, because that's a lot more predictive than how you may look on the outside. How you feel about finances, we find, doesn't matter your age or income. There's certain basic principles of how you feel about managing money or credit cards that are way more predictive than whether you're 21 or 41. So here, I'm not going to go through this whole slide, but this is just to let you know that behind what I'm going to show you is a ton of math and statistics. We try to take a segmentation, we'll do a study, we'll go out and field an online survey of usually thousands of consumers, and ask them questions about whatever we're interested in learning about, as well as some demographics and other basic stuff. And then we go and we apply a ton of math to that. I don't personally do all this statistical analysis, but we have people usually at the research company that we hire that do this. So there's stuff like, have you taken statistics, any of you? If you want to go into like marketing, market research, it's really important to understand statistics. So that's something, if you haven't taken it now, you'll either take it next year or you'll take it in college if you go to business, because it's the one kind of math that I use constantly in my job. I don't actually calculate it, but I have to understand how it's done in order to ask the right questions and come to the right conclusions. There's things like chi-squared and a Bayesian model. There's all sorts of math behind the scenes. I've never used calculus. I'm sorry for any of you. Never used calculus in my life, never used geometry, but stats is something that's really core to what we do in consumer insights and a lot of marketing. So we won't go through all of what those different things are. When we're defining our segments in any marketplace, we need to make sure a couple things. Sometimes you'll do all this math and you'll come out with these groups and they don't make sense. And that's where you need to apply your business judgment. You need to make sure that the segments that the math comes up with on your survey actually make sense in the real world. You might get someone, they may segment people as like, you may get this segment of like health conscious consumers. They work out 3 days a week and they take vitamins and then they smoke 5 packs a day. No, it doesn't, like those variables don't belong together. But sometimes the math will come out and give you things that just don't make sense. And that's where you need to apply your business judgment to say this segment is not, it's not right. The segments have to be actionable. And they have to be big enough. A lot of times if you do the math for a segmentation, you might come up with one big group that's 80% of your market, and then you'll come up with like 3 smaller groups that are like, 8 to 10% of your market. It doesn't make sense to have one, if you've got one big group that's 80% of your market, it's probably not a good segmentation, it's too big. So, when I said we use actual behaviors to create market segments, question?
Well, how do you like find the segments how do you find the qualities that create the segments of your consumers?
Yeah.
Is it like by surveys?
Yes, this is most of what we do. When you do a segmentation, it's primarily a quantitative study, and it's usually done on an online survey that people take on their mobile or they take on their desktop. And there's companies out there that have panels of millions of people that join these panels, and they get an incentive. It's usually like 50 cents, $1 a survey, something like that. And they give us pretty good data. There's enough people around the country that belong to these that we can get a pretty good representation. But these are an example of things that we ask about. When I said we want to ask about behaviors, like for credit cards, we were looking at segmenting out what we call our revolver credit card holders, which are people who carry a balance on their card. They don't pay it off every month. They're where we make most of our money. We were looking to segment them out. So we looked at things like how disciplined you are with your spending. And you can see there's a scale here. You spend freely without a means to control or account for it, or you actively maintain a budget and are in control of your spending. We looked at lifestyles, how you prefer to use credit, your level of financial stress that you're under. We looked at how important rewards are to you. We looked at how comfortable you are carrying a balance on your credit card. There's some people that just, to save their life, they will never carry a balance on their credit card. We call those people transactors. We look at how open you are to a new credit card offer.
What does that mean by like not carrying a balance while on your credit card?
To pay it off every month.
You pay it off every single month. Like I go and I make my purchases, I charge $1,000, and I make sure I pay all $1,000 at the end of the month.
Is that good to do?
It is good to do.
That's so misleading.
Sorry.
It is good to
It's not
do.
good for the credit card company,
Yes.
but it's good for you as an individual.
And I would say about half of, in the U.S. population, about half, a little over half of the credit card owning population does that. They pay off their balance every month. The other half does not. And that is, we can make money on people who pay their balance off every month. It's still a viable business model because we're making money on each and every transaction from the merchant. Every store you swipe it at, we take a little cut of that. Yeah, 2 to 3% depending on where you shop. So we make a little money here and there. We don't make all of that 2%. It gets divided up by a whole bunch of people who are all taking a little piece of the pie. But so we can make money there, but our real money is behind people who carry a balance. So we spend a lot of time studying those people. So here are the segments we came up with on these revolvers. And you can see here they're pretty evenly split up. Like I said, you don't want a big segment where you've got 80% of your people in one bucket. That's probably not a good segmentation. But you can see this is pretty evenly distributed around these different behaviors of people with their credit cards. And so we have fun names. These names are personas. Did you guys talk about personas? Segmentation. A segmentation will lead you to personas. And personas are a tool that designers and marketers use to develop communications. So you can see we found 5 different segments of these revolving credit card owners. And you can see there's different attitudes that each of them have. These people are just getting by. These consistent jugglers, they're paying off their cards as best they can. We've got indifferent acceptors. These people are in denial. They're not stressed out about it, but they continue to carry balances and they just kind of ignore their situation. There's people that are looking to enhance their lifestyle. They're buying cruises, and these people are racking up the bills and have not really come to the realization that they are going to pay it off and they may never pay it off. So you can see there's a lot of different segments, and then what we do is we use those. I said personas. You take your segmentation, you put some catchy names to them, color coding things, and you develop these personas. And the personas are really just tools for illustrating the range of the users that you found in your segmentation. It's a way of illustrating your segments so that your designers and your copywriters and people who are developing your market plans can develop specific communications to talk to each of those. Because you can imagine you talk to someone who's in that lifestyle enhancer group, you talk to them a lot differently, right, than you'd talk to somebody who's in denial about their situation. So we try to customize communication based on what segment you fall. So that's market segmentation. Questions on market segmentation? Is this going to be helpful to you at all when you're, okay. Market sizing. You usually actually do the market sizing probably before you do the segmentation. I probably should have flipped them a little bit. But this is about seeing who you're really going after and how big of a universe that is and what it's overlapping with. And so I'm going to show you an example of a segmentation that we did for Discover for student loans, trying to understand how many people are actually in the market for, can we cross-sell student credit cards with student loans? So you can kind of see, there was a lot of math. Like I said, there was a huge report that goes behind this, but this is kind of where it nets out, is we identified that there were 16.6 million consumers under 24 years old out there. And then we kind of segmented out 4.7 million of those actually have a student loan. Another 2.4 million of them actually have a student credit card. And we looked at the overlap there of people who own both a credit card and a student loan, and tried to identify where the opportunities are. And so this isn't perfectly like drawn to scale, but it kind of gives you an idea, and it allowed us to share with the team sort of who their market was, who their target market was. Does that make sense? And is it big enough? Is 1.8 million, is that segment big enough to go after or not from a business standpoint? So it kind of lets you The next thing I was going to show you guys is consumer decision journey. You guys heard of a consumer decision journey? It's basically every product and category has sort of a different journey in terms of how people identify that they need it. They collect information typically. They evaluate different alternative products. And then they make an actual decision on what they're going to do. Those are kind of the stages, but people move through them in a different sequence depending on what product you're talking about and what kind of consumer they are. So a decision journey is something that helps us kind of quantify how people move through that process. And I thought this one would be fun for you guys because it's the typical private student loan journey. You guys are all juniors, right?
Most of us.
3 sophomores.
Okay. So you guys are probably right about here, beginning of your journey, researching schools, right? You're thinking about what colleges you might want to go to. You're gathering your information, etc. So you're just at the very beginning. This can be a fairly long piece of the journey, and the emotion here is excitement. And we found this both through, to get to this journey, we did both qualitative research where we went out and talked to college students and talked to parents of prospective college students, as well as did quantitative like surveys online to kind of quantify people's thoughts and feelings. So there's excitement. When you're getting ready to apply to the school, there's nervousness and anticipation. Once you've filled out those applications, we find that your sentiment kind of plummets, and you go into this kind of regret, fear. Oh my gosh, am I going to get accepted? What am I going to do? You get accepted. You start to build hope, but then you learn the cost of tuition, which kind of and you complete what they call the FAFSA, which is the financial aid application. I'm kind of going through this little journey myself right now, so I thought it would. And that's where we see consumer sentiment and consumer feelings like plummet. as they fear they're not going to get anything, you're not going to get any scholarships, how am I going to go to school? Then you learn how much student financial aid you will actually receive, and you start to try to put together a plan to make it work, right? You've got some anxiety and confusion, you're researching private student loan options, you apply for a private student loan, and at this point you've got a feeling of anticipation. You get approved for your student loan, and you've got a sense of accomplishment and relief. Shortly after that, you start to worry about your burden of debt and fear of repayment. So we did a bunch of analysis, talked to a bunch of people to kind of quantify that this is actually the path that people take when applying for a student loan. And so you can imagine, as you're going to market a product like that, you've got to think about where your consumer is in this journey. And at each point you want to reach them, what is their state right now, and how can you help them? How can your product help them? How do you want to position your product for the state they are in their journey? Does that make sense? Can you think about how you would apply that to some of your projects? This is the nice thing about student loans is it's seasonal, and everybody moves through it at kind of the same pace. You've got something like a credit card where there's people that are in and out of the market. It's not seasonal. It can happen any time of the year. You've got different consumers at different stages in this journey, and trying to intercept them at the right time when they're making that decision. So really, the bottom line is that this enables us to get into the consumer's head and better reach them and talk to them as they're kind of going through the process. And so you can use something like this to kind of map out when you're going to talk to your customer. Brand health tracking, how are we doing on time?
We have about 30 minutes.
Okay. We'll go really quickly through this. We look at how our brand is perceived relative to competitors and ourselves. And our two biggest metrics that we use to say whether we're winning from a marketing standpoint are two things. The first one is non-card member consideration. If you do not have a Discover card, how likely are you to consider getting one the next time you're in the market? And the other piece that we look at is card member recommendation. How likely are you to recommend? If you own a Discover card, how likely are you to recommend it to somebody else? And so we map us and our competitors out, and we track them quarter by quarter to see how people are moving. You can see here we actually moved up in recommendation. We're having a tougher time getting people who don't have the card to consider us. Capital One is the most considered credit card brand in the market right now. Wells Fargo actually did a big slide. Does anybody know have you heard of Wells Fargo? Do you know?
I mean, I know what happened.
Yeah,
They had a big scandal that they were opening accounts without customers' knowledge. They were doing a lot of things with their customers' data that just wasn't very appropriate and very legal. And so they had a ton of bad press. And we see them they've completely tanked as a business in terms of how people perceive their brand. And that shows you it's really hard to move up on the brand health meter. It's really easy to move down if you screw up.
So why is Capital One most considered?
Why? They spend a lot of money on advertising. That's one reason. They've been very singularly focused on rewards in their messaging. So they spend a lot of time talking about their rewards. Have you heard? Are you guys familiar with Capital One? Do you know who they have as their sponsors?
I always see
They
like
have
Yep.
all these superstars.
Yep, they have Jennifer Garner and Samuel L. Jackson, who spend a lot of money on celebrity endorsements, and they spend a lot of money on advertising. So they have very high consideration. Once you get their card, their customer service isn't that great and their customer experience isn't that great, which is why they're not as high on that. They will also, they tend to advertise their rewards, like their cash rewards and their miles, but when you actually go to their site and apply for their card, what they will often do is they will downgrade you to a a card without any rewards. So they do a little bit of bait and switch, but that's how they build that consideration.
Is there a reason why the Chase and American Express like both went down? Like, is there like, or is it just like time and stuff?
Yeah, I don't know exactly why Cap 1 went down a little bit in recommendation. Chase has not been advertising as much recently. And you can see when you're out of mind of the consumer, you very quickly start to lose your share. They've been advertising their bank products, but they haven't been doing a lot of advertising of their card products. So I think that is probably why they're losing some ground. It's about being top of mind, which is why we advertise like pretty much 50 weeks out of the year. We're always on, and we're always in people's mailboxes. And so here, I thought we'd do ad testing. And I'll take you through a couple examples and show you some ads. But when are you guys going to develop ads for your products?
It's entirely up to them.
Okay. Well, this is I think the most fun part. The three elements, what we've learned are the three elements of a great ad are, number one, breakthrough, which is, are people going to notice your ad? There's so much clutter out there in the market, whether it's online or on TV or on the radio. Will they actually take notice and will you grab their attention? The second piece of that is branding, because there's a lot of ads that will grab your attention, but you don't, at the end of the day, you don't remember what they're for. Can you guys think of any ads like that you like, oh, that's a great ad, the one with the whatever, and you have no idea what they're for?
Oh, that's the one, Aaron whatever his name is, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Last night, and he was like walking in the Cubs, I mean on the Bears field.
For the
I always
bows.
hear green.
It's for the bows.
Yeah, so that's, you've got to have breakthrough, but you've got to tie it back to your brand. Because there's a lot of companies out there that you'll do something really catchy to catch consumers' attention. Do you remember the Discover ads for Peggy? Do you guys remember? If we have time, I'll show you one. But it's an ad campaign that we did that was really good at breakthrough. People loved it. They thought it was hysterical. But nobody knew it was from us, and we weren't getting credit for it. So it's got to be breakthrough, it's got to be well branded, and it's got to be persuasive. It's got to have a message about your product that makes people actually want to get it. Because there's some ads that can be really funny, like the Cap 1 What's in Your Wallet, the stuff they do around the NCAA March Madness. Have you seen those where they have Spike Lee and Barkley? They do a lot of talking about stuff. They don't ever even talk about their product. So what we see is they're very breakthrough and they're very well branded, but they're not very persuasive because they're not telling you anything about the product. So we test a lot of creative concepts. This is what we do this is from our credit scorecard, which is an ad that we aired a year or two ago. This is an example. We will have the agency concept, all different types of ways in to talk about that credit scorecard that we want to test with consumers. So I can show you a couple of these. And we test these online in surveys with consumers, ask them like a standard battery of questions about these ads, and then we compare them across ad to ad to ad and see which ad scores the highest on what measures and kind of why it works or why it doesn't work. I will show you one that didn't work.
Discover. True or false? I can get my credit scorecard from you guys for free, even if I'm not a customer?
True. And it has your FICO credit score, a score that 90% of top lenders use, including us.
Great. True or false? The better my score, the more options I'll have?
True. And you can even see how your current credit card compares to others out there.
Nice. True or false? Checking your credit score hurts your credit?
False. That's an old wives' tale.
What'd you say about my wife? Check your credit, compare your card. Free at discover.com/credit scorecard.
So that's one we didn't produce.
Why?
Any idea why? Hmm?
I was gonna ask why. I don't know.
It doesn't promote that it's Discover.
I think it does a pretty good job promoting its Discover, but it was kind of boring.
Oh,
And the comment at the end about the guy's wife was kind of offensive to some people.
Yeah.
I'll show you one more
Discover?
that we didn't
Hey,
produce.
so I see I can get my credit scorecard from you guys? Yeah, for free, even if you're not a customer. Plus, you can compare your current credit card to make sure you got the right one. What? Wish you could do that with online dating.
Caroline.
Oh, no.
Check your credit, compare your card. Free at discover.com/credit scorecard.
I feel like that one's more realistic than the first one because, like, I feel like I don't know. I would never call and be like true or false this. So, like, I think that one made more sense.
It was, this one was more realistic. This one did okay. We almost produced it, but there was a lot of, it gets into like online dating and this guy being really kind of creepy and he kind of distracted from, it kind of, what it did is this sort of launched consumers into a whole nother area of like online dating and it wasn't focused enough. This is the one we actually ended up producing. Oh, and we can't open it. Let's see.
Discover card. Hi, I'm calling about the credit scorecard. Go get it. Oh.
One more time.
Discover card. Hi, I'm calling about the credit scorecard. Go get it. Oh, well, you can get it yourself online. And see your FICO credit score right there. Oh, right. Awesome. Give it to me. Give it. Give it. Sure. We give it to everyone for free, even if you're not a customer. That's a good boy. Well, I can't take all the credit. People do seem to like us. You can even read the reviews online. 4.8 stars. Wow, that's good. Now sit. I am? Check your credit. Compare your card. Free at discover.com/credit scorecard.
I like that one.
Yeah, that was sort of the winning ad that we ended up going with. One thing we learned throughout, and we learned through earlier work, is you really have to show the product in action. So you notice all of them contain that demonstration of the scorecard where we show the website and we show somebody using it and kind of what it is. That was really important to kind of communicating what it was. Have you seen this, what we call our construct on air, where we use the Discover call center and somebody calls in and they look like the rep. That's been our ongoing campaign since like 2013. It works really well for us. And do you know why it works really well for us? If you think about the three things that I talked about.
Persuasive?
They are persuasive, but that was not what I was trying to.
It shows what you're trying to sell. Well, it's like you trust yourself.
Yes, part of it is trust and building that reciprocity with the customer, like we treat you like you treat you, is very powerful. The other piece is where it allows us to go back to the Discover call center, and there's a logo up there, and he's talking, and so it's super well branded. You can't watch the commercial and not have it directly linked back to Discover Card. So that is like the #1 reason we continue to stick with this format is that, and we've done some cool stuff. We've done like eye tracking. We do eye tracking and like facial coding on some of our ads where we see where people's eyes are going and you do see that people focus on the face, but they also see that logo in the back. So that's actually a really powerful thing, and we've been able to it's sometimes limiting. Our creative ad agency gets kind of frustrated sometimes because all of their ideas have to work in that construct, but it works. We found it works really hard on air for us. It works well.
Did the same person make every single one of those ads?
The same person?
Yeah, or like small group of people. Do you have
Like the
multiple
same team make me all these are like different teams?
Yeah, we have one like lead creative director at the ad agency who's kind of been here since the birth of this campaign, but he's got a whole team of copywriters and designers, and they all come in and they all bring their ideas. And there was probably for these what are there 9 up here? There was probably 20 that the agency started with, and they may whittle them down, and they brought us 9 to choose from that they thought kind of fit the bill. And then from these, we decide like which ones to put into test and which one to ultimately produce. But there's a whole bunch of people behind the scenes working for these, and it's good. We like to have a variety of people on our business, and at an agency they will typically shift people around to different accounts. They don't tend to let, when you're junior, they tend to move you to different accounts so you can learn different businesses, and so we as clients get fresh ideas. And the people that write and design these, then they send them off to an actual illustrator to create these. So there's a whole nother team. There's the team that comes up with the idea, and then there's a whole team of actual illustrators and folks that actually put these together for us. So
Discover, true or false?
I didn't mean to.
I can get my credit scorecard from you guys for free, even if I'm not a customer?
True. And it has your FICO credit score, a score that 90% of top lenders use, including us.
Okay, let's go. I'll show you really quick the final ad that we produced.
Discover,
so you can kind of
I'm
see
not
it.
a Discover customer, but I'm talking about that credit scorecard. Get it? Oh, sure. We give it to everyone for free.
Oh, well, that's nice.
Go get it.
You can go get it yourself online and see your FICO credit score right there.
Right.
That's a good boy. Thanks. Oh, and you can even see how your current card compares to others out there.
Wow, convenient.
Ooh, somebody wants a belly rub. What now?
Check your credit and compare your card. Free for everyone at
Yeah,
discover.com/credit score.
Have you guys seen that before? It hasn't aired for probably like a year, but it was out there for quite a while.
I remember the frog one.
The frog one? Okay. That's probably one of our more memorable spots. That one didn't do quite as well on persuasion, necessarily, because it wasn't really talking about anything new. It was talking about the fact that you're not authorized for any fraud charges, and that's kind of the case with every credit card. So it wasn't really, but it did get a lot of attention. So we use both quantitative, when we run those tests, those animatics you just saw, this is an example of like charts of data that we look at to see how they score on all different kinds of dimensions with people. So we will go through, for this we went through like round 1, round 2, round 3, round 4. And when you finally get over here, this is finally the ad we ended up producing. You can see kind of the green. I don't expect that you can read all this, but these are all different questions we asked consumers about these ads to predict whether it was going to work in market. And we went through a lot of them before we got to the one that we ultimately produced and worked. And you'll spend about $1 million, over $1 million to produce one of these commercials. So that is why it's worth going through this process, which can sometimes take, this probably took us 6 months, 6-8 months to get through all these and actually get something on air. So we don't just look at a bunch of data, though. We also look at qualitative feedback. And we do this, this is a service, when people are taking a survey, we ask them to opt in if they record a video of themselves, and we ask them a question about the video and say, the ad, and say, what do you think of this? And they're usually pretty honest, so I thought I would just share kind of a funny.
So I know I have 3 minutes, I don't really need that much. Bottom line is that's an irritating ad. Those girls, look, my wife's in here right now. She doesn't talk like that, and when I see girls talk like that, it irritates the heck out of me, and no, just get women's empowerment thing, and apparently they're going to think that's interesting. I think it's kind of condescending. So, yeah, don't run anything like that. That's terrible. How about you treat like intelligent human beings? Because they are.
This was a man who was responding to a spot that he thought was offensive to women. And in our data, it's very hard to capture that through a survey question. And that's why it's really important to actually get real live consumer feedback too. It's kind of the why behind why you don't like something that is really hard to capture with like a bunch of survey questions. So we will do this from time to time to get people's reactions to things before we air them and not make really big mistakes like go on the air with an ad that was offensive to women. So that's kind of funny. I want to show you one ad. I don't know if you've seen this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, that's
She runs all the way back. She's like freezes.
Oh, it's like when
It is
Oh,
not.
nice. Spoil the movie. Come
Yeah,
on.
she freezes. She
I'm gonna
freezes
show you
everything and then
this.
she goes
If
to
you misplaced
back
your
at the club.
Discover card, you can now use Freeze It to prevent new purchases on your account in seconds.
I've seen it.
And once you find it, you can switch it right on again.
You're back.
Freeze It, only from Discover. Get it at discover.com.
I remember looking at his neck like, why is it like so long to move?
Okay.
I get that.
Yeah.
Me too, Casey.
What? What did you say?
I said if I had like an actual freeze button, I'd definitely like get like 20 of those. Yeah. Why did you ask if you don't care?
Wait, sorry, I just didn't hear what you said.
I'm not important anyone.
I thought awkward.
It's still relevant.
Any idea why that works? Or do you think, actually, do you guys like it?
I like
from
it.
the reaction, I feel like
Well, it's
everybody...
Quick, and then you could see the discovery. Like you could see that on her phone, and you could see it on the card.
You get like a physical representation.
And then they sent Discover.
Yes.
Yeah.
This this is the best performing ad in all of the 17 years that I've worked at Discover Card. This is probably our #1 top ad. And it's because of that. It shows the benefit actually, like it takes that idea of freeze and brings it to life in the commercial. You cannot watch that commercial without understanding that idea throughout the whole storyline. It's well branded, right? It includes Discover throughout. You have it on the mobile app. You have it at the end, and it's attention getting, right? It has that breakthrough power.
When you say like this is our #1 ad, how are you rating that? Are you doing it based off like the surveys or like what people rated it? Or?
Yes, there are. That leads me to my next slide, which is perfect. There are two main components that we look at when we rate all our ads. So this is all the ads we've run from 2013 to present and how they did. These are our two, what we call our KPIs. Have you heard of people mention KPIs in business a lot? That stands for Key Performance Indicator. And in the business world, you will hear it thrown out all the time. What are your KPIs? Well, our KPIs for advertising are two things. Branded recall, which we talked about this. Remember, this was what? Breakthrough? Will it get noticed and catch attention? And is it, what's the branded part of branded recall?
The brand.
Yes, is it tied back to the brand? So do people notice it, and do they tie it back to Discover? So that's branded recall. So these lines are all the ads in the credit card category. We work with a partner in research, and we test everybody's ads. We test probably 30 ads a month out there with consumers, and we develop these norms. And we find out how breakthrough and how well the ad breaks through and how well branded it is and how persuasive it is. How likely is it that you're going to get a Discover card the next time you're in the market? And we rate the ads on those. So you can see the Freeze Girls up here is the best in terms of branded recall and the most persuasive of anything we've run. So these orange bubbles are just all of the Discover ads. And the size of the bubble here, that is how much money we've spent on that ad. So the bigger the bubble, the more money we've put against the ad. So this is kind of a snapshot that we use in meetings all the time to say, how is a certain ad performing? And this is kind of our gold standard right here. Does that make sense? So when you're developing your ads, what are you going to try to achieve?
Persuasive, branded, and breakthrough.
Yep, that is it.
Wow, Katie.
We're going to skip user testing just so that maybe, I've got like how many more minutes?
9.
Usability is how we design our website to make sure that it's, people can complete basic tasks easily and quickly and people don't get confused. You guys have probably been to websites that are confusing. We actually bring people in and watch how they behave and watch them navigate to see if they can do certain exercises quickly. Behavioral insights are, like we talked about, all the things I've showed you are not behavioral. They're mostly asking people what you would do and what you think of something. Behavioral is more how people act in the real world. They make decisions based on emotions, and they take shortcuts mentally. You don't analyze every single decision you make. You're using a lot of shortcuts throughout your day. And what Behavioral Insights does is tries to take some of those decisions and develop some basic principles. This is an example of the unconscious mind running our life. Does anybody see anything ironic about that picture? But you know what? These people are on autopilot. They're not even thinking about the fact that they're going up to work out. They should be taking. You see an escalator, your human nature is to take the easiest possible path from point A to point B, and they're hopping on the escalator. So that's the sort of like mental shortcuts or things that people do unconsciously. But if you ask them about it, I'm very healthy. Why would I, no, I'll take the stairs. They won't, they'll take the escalator. So some of the ways we use this and apply it to credit cards is there's a bunch of principles that underlie it, but it's about always labeling your product with the key benefit, because that's what's going to bring people in, is that benefit. Always try to avoid having people do the math, because unconsciously nobody does the math. Just break it out for them and tell them what their savings are for a particular offer. We do a lot with choices. Here there's 2 choices. A lot of times we'll provide people with 4 choices, and we will very intentionally give them one choice that's sort of bad on the very low end, and we'll give them one really expensive choice. We don't expect anybody to take this really expensive high-end choice. What we're doing is we're giving them that high expensive choice of a product or payment so that this other one looks better. And we know people will be more likely to pick, offer C because we've given them a point of context for comparison. Have you ever seen that done before? You'll think about that the next time you're in a restaurant and going to order a dish off the menu. There might be choices that are automatically higher priced just to get you to choose the thing that's slightly less expensive. So those are kind of the ways we use behavioral or unconscious tactics that people use to make decisions, to kind of guide some of our choices that we do in marketing. And like I said, we have we have a guy with a PhD in this that can speak way more proficiently than I am about some of these underlying unconscious heuristics that people apply when they're making decisions. So I think that's pretty much everything I brought for you. We pretty much got through it all. Do you guys think this is like helpful at all, interesting at all?
Yes, that was very informative. Yes, that was very helpful.
Anybody thinking like maybe they want to do something like this?
Oh yeah.
In the future? It is a really fun job. I mean, I got to tell you, I learn something new every day. Question?
So someone that works in consumer insights, would that always be someone that had like a background in marketing or
Typically, yes. Although, you know what, I had a boss who had an engineering degree, and changed course and decided to go into marketing, and so, but typically I would say it's a marketing degree. You can, some good minors might be psychology would be a good minor, because if you think about like these underlying principles and kind of those unconscious behaviors, psychology, we use a lot of psychology, so that would be a good minor. Statistics would be a good minor, because like I said, under all this is a lot of data. I'm not good at math. I have a BA in communications, so that is not my area. It kind of scared me when I moved over to consumer insights, and I'm like, oh my God, I gotta learn. I'm gonna have to learn this, but this is statistics, which I think statistics is a little different than your hardcore like math, and it's very applicable, and it all kind of makes sense, at least to me, as I started to have to learn more about that as I got into this end of the job. From an ad agency perspective, you can see like a degree in art or something that makes you think creatively. What I like about my job most probably is the fact that it combines both art and science, if that makes any sense. Is that we use, everything we do is based on facts that we hear from consumers. And but there's also a whole creative element about how you take those facts and bring them to life in your advertising or your communications or your product that you're developing. So to me, that's what makes it fun, is that I get to do a little bit of both. Spanish would be another good major to couple with something like this, just because we do so much. I mean, that market is growing so fast. A lot of these, we're a US-based brand, so all of my research is done here in the United States, but there are other big companies that are global brands that are constantly doing this same kind of research all over the world in different countries. So, you know, that second language and just those types of, you know, experiences are also really important.
So you said what you enjoy the most. So you enjoy the mixing of like the coming up with data and kind of mixing it in like a specific creative way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you have to be a good storyteller to do this job too, because you've got to take all these facts that sometimes don't make sense, and you have to pull out the facts to piece together a story, because sometimes there's stuff that kind of like outliers that distract you. There's so much data, and finding those key like nuggets and insights and building them into a story, and then being able to put that into the market and say, yes, it worked, is kind of cool. Did I do anything to really embarrass my children today? No?
Your daughter was on my sister's softball team.
Yes, I know, Caitlin. That's why I kept looking at you, because you were the one familiar face in the room.
She was in my, she plays volleyball too. She was in my like group, like was like paired up like varsity and like sophomore and freshman. Yeah, so she was in my group. She was so sweet.
Okay.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
She was like
Thank
the
you
only one that
guys.
would talk to me too.
Okay.
Good to see you.
Great. Okay, I hope that was. Thanks, guys, for being a good audience.
No problem.
Casey, did you press stop on the...
Press stop.
Yo, I'm not a big cameraman person. Oh, found it. Good job.